Hi, this is Bruno from Intruders TV. I'm here with Mike Feinstein. Mike, can you please tell us about yourself? You are a key figure here on the New England scene. Everyone we talked about keep referring me back to you. Can you please introduce yourself, tell us about your background, and what you're doing right now with the entrepreneurs and web startups?
Yeah, what I've been doing recently is kind of advising early stage companies. My background is I've got a technology background in computer science, and I worked as an entrepreneur for about 17 years in 4 different startup companies. In the last 8 years, I've been in venture capital, making investments in early stage companies. But at the start of this year, I decided I wanted to do something a little bit different, and I left the firm I was at and have been doing this advisory work for the time being while I figure out what I'm going to do next.
You've been on the New England scene for a long time. Can you please give us a good overview of the Boston scene, what's happening, who are the up-and-coming trends on the market, and your thoughts basically about the Boston entrepreneur scene?
Sure. Well, the Boston startup market has always been one focused around infrastructure, whether if you go back far enough, there's the workstation companies, the networking companies, software infrastructure companies. And one of the challenges in Boston is that most of these companies don't end up surviving. Even if they're successful, they sell out to somebody else. So I use the term anchor tenants to describe these big companies that are here for good. And there's only a few: EMC, maybe analog devices in the analog component space. And so I think part of the challenge is that we don't have enough of these big companies that really stick around, and that our expertise is in infrastructure. And in many ways, the infrastructure space never really totally goes out of style, but it may not be the strongest thing right now. So for the internet and web application space, there aren't a lot of existing big companies. There's not a big talent pool to draw upon. And I think that's been a challenge for the Boston area. There's not a lot of experienced entrepreneurs in these segments. There's not a lot of companies to draw on in terms of bringing out talent. And I think that's created a little bit of kind of a pause in the whole venture capital area. Things might be warming up a little bit now, but in general, the last few years, there hasn't been that much activity because the trend has been to do stuff on the consumer side with web applications, and there aren't a lot of people that know a lot about those businesses to get them going. The venture capitalists in Boston, who are mostly experienced on the infrastructure side, want to back people in these new areas, but they're looking for experienced people with business plans that can become very, very big companies. And I think any new segment in a new geography doesn't really start off that way. And I think part of the challenge has been finding investors that are willing to back some of these early stage companies and help get them going. Maybe being satisfied with doubles and triples in terms of outcomes instead of a home run, but to help get the whole segment going, to give entrepreneurs that experience and get some of the early stage companies started. I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs who are frustrated because they can't raise a couple $1 million to get their venture going, or even the first $1 million. There's some angels that are active who can do small investments, but anything bigger, it's hard to get the VCs motivated. Most VCs say, well, come back when you have a lot more traction, and by then, it'll be easier to make the investment decision, but it's hard to really bridge that gap. There's a few early stage funds that are doing it, but there's probably not enough. And out on the West Coast, I think you see much more of that type of activity.
Can you, now that you have a really good knowledge of all the Boston startups, can you please pinpoint a few startups that we should have a look at, we should follow, we should pay attention to?
Yeah, so one of the companies I really like is a company called Geezeo. They're in the personal financial management space. They're doing a web application. It's kind of like Quicken, but much more targeted and really aimed at kind of the next generation of users and the financial management issues that they face, managing student loans, managing credit card debt, and doing this all up on the web in a very secure fashion and building a whole social network around it so you can leverage from other people's expertise. These are real scrappy guys. They've done some good technology partnerships to help get their company going. They've gotten a lot of good press in the Wall Street Journal, the Boston Globe, and other places, and I think they're going to be very successful. Another startup I like is called Good Together, and this is a company still in stealth mode, but what they have said about what they're doing is really connecting users and charitable causes and media properties, again with a whole social networking flavor, to help connect charities to find volunteers using social networking, and also for large media properties and large brands to be able to reach those users with a message around giving back. And I think these guys are getting a huge amount of traction with large brands, with large media properties, and with the nonprofits, and they're going to launch later this year.
Thanks a lot for this coverage. Can you please tell us a bit, how do you see the Northeast evolving? How do you think things are going to move? Which industry is going to come up? What's the future of the web and entrepreneur scene here in the Northeast and in Boston?
Well, I think on the web side, the only path forward that I really see is investors taking some chances and backing some first-time entrepreneurs, helping get their businesses going. Probably not going to create the next YouTube-type company here, but I think there can be some very nice, successes that will help get the market going. But I think, perhaps the stronger areas in the Boston scene are going to be in maybe some other segments. I think the infrastructure segment continues to kind of chug along with opportunities there, and perhaps renewable energy and clean energy is an area where there already is some new activity here in Boston, and I think Boston has a good chance of being a major hub of activity for that type of sector.
Well, Mike, thanks a lot for your time and all your perspective on what's happening here in Boston.
Sure, thank you. It was a pleasure.